Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to my online public meeting for North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service. My name is Commissioner Zoe, and I'll be chairing this meeting. So apologies today, we've got from the Chief Fire Officer, Jonathan Dyson. Just to say that the last meeting can be viewed online on my website. So we'll go straight over now to the performance section. So can I come to Damien, please?
You can, Commissioner, thank you. I will just share my screen. And if you can just confirm that you can see that for me. So the performance report again, this is from the 1st of April 2023 to the end of the calendar year, the end of December 2023. As we go through the report, you will see we've got a consistent report this time from what we've done from the last 3 or 4 reports. So we've got that consistent reporting coming through now. So with regards our summary of performance, within prevention, we have done overall, we have increased the number of prevention activities by 12% on the same reporting period from last year. This is 3,685 home fire safety visits. These do include smoke detector fitting only, and also those households where we've been unable to complete or they have declined our interventions with them. This equates to 210 days of activity time. Of these 3,685, 761 of those were in very high or high risk households, and those are predominantly the properties that we are most interested in getting our interventions into those. As you can see, we have had 650 of the 3,685 which have been declined by the occupier. And as we continue to record, 34 jobs which are categorised as very high and high are actually past their visit date. But within prevention have developed a new data dashboard to be able to track all of those, so we are aware for each of those 34 why we haven't got into those premises as yet, and it can be for a number of reasons. With regards to protection, there has been an overall decrease in activity for the same reporting period from last year. This is mainly due to a reduction in fire safety audits, and this is due to the fact that the risk-based intervention programme is being further developed, and we are doing a lot of cleansing on the data there. I will say that there has been a decrease in activity, but we have got the new national dashboards that does say that within North Yorkshire, we do a very high number of protection activity. We're actually double on average the England average. I think the England average is 2 per known 100 premises, and in North Yorkshire we actually do 4 of the fire safety audits per known premises. This equates to 304 days of activity and includes fire audits, data maintenance, and our consultations. And the consultations, we have got extremely high compliance with the timescales that are set for us, and all the very high and high risk premises that we needed to inspect have been done. With regards prevention activity, as you can see in December, we did have a slight drop in performance where we went down to 324 home fire safety visits from the average number that we do of 409. This is for a number of reasons. Obviously, at the period of the Christmas period, we do get quite a number of people who actually try and defer the home fire safety visit or decline from us coming into their properties, but that number is far higher than it was in previous years, where we saw a really significant drop off in December. We haven't seen that too much this time. With regards prevention, these are all the qualitative outputs and outcomes that have been delivered by prevention, and as you can see, Commissioner, loads of other activity as well as the home fire safety visits that we have done. We've delivered a live course to young people at Selby Fire Station, and 12 young people successfully completed that 5-day intense course, and we've also delivered 162 school education sessions across all key stages from 1 to 5, and these include topics around those priorities that we suggested in the RRM around home fire safety, road safety, and also water safety. Just on the productivity outcomes, we have launched the prevention, early intervention and safeguarding strategy internally, and a number of different activities there that we have actually done. One of the others in the compliance outcomes, which was part of the NYFRS report and an area for us to improve, which is the assurance pilot, just to make sure when we are delivering those home fire safety visits that we're performing them to a consistent level across all of North Yorkshire. So we've delivered that pilot at 4 stations, and you can see there that they were at Scarborough, Selby, Northallerton and Richmond.
Can I ask a question, please, on the hubs? Damien, please. So we talk about the prevention hub in Northallerton. So what's the remit of the hub and how will it help improve prevention work?
Thank you for that question, Zoe. I can answer that, but I believe Area Manager Tom Hurst's on the call, who is the lead for prevention and protection. So I think he would answer it far better than me. Tom?
Apologies, Commissioner. I think Tom's had to just step out for a course, so I'm more than happy to answer that. So I think from our point of view, it's about how we firstly ensure that we create those positive relationships with our communities based on trust and confidence in the first instance. So gaining the trust and confidence of our communities certainly breaks down barriers, and once those barriers have been broken down, we can start to look at targeted prevention and protection activities within the most vulnerable areas. And the prevention hubs certainly do that. From the feedback that we've got initially, it's been extremely positive. And it's something that we're starting to look at across the sector, but ultimately from an initial point of view, it's definitely breaking down those barriers and creating that better, more meaningful relationship with the communities of North Yorkshire.
Thank you. And can I just ask a quick question, Damien, before we move much further on? And it's around the 17% of safe and well activities declined, is unable to contact or complete the visits. I'm concerned that those safe and well activity visits that are declined are with the high risk vulnerable groups. Is that correct? And what the service doing to really access and support those groups?
I did have a look at this, Commissioner, and it is across all risk groups where we do get that decline. But as you've suggested there, some of those will be in those high risk, and we are really working on ways in which we can access those premises, because it's really important for us as a fire service, if we do get some of those, which will have been referrals from our partner agencies, that we do get access into those premises, just to make sure that our communities are safe as they possibly can be within their homes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So this slide is with regards to our business fire safety. As we've suggested, there has been a 7% decrease in activity. Some of that is down to our operational staff who do deliver fire safety activity on behalf of protection as well. And as I've suggested earlier, part of this is we do a high number of fire safety audits. We're actually in a process of cleansing our information currently, but it is still really positive that our operational crews are going in and they're inspecting businesses across North Yorkshire, because it gives them a better understanding of the built environment in case there ever was an emergency as well. So albeit it's declined slightly, as I've said, we still do a high number of audits across North Yorkshire.
So, Damien, would you say there isn't really a risk associated to that it's dropped 7% then across the board?
What we actually do, we do a lot of audits, Commissioner. A lot of those audits are, especially from the crews, are in low risk and medium risk. And the advice nationally through the National Fire Chiefs Council is that you do a sample of those. Because we've been cleansing our data, the sample that we have been doing is quite high, which would look very high compared to other services. There's a reason why we've done that, just to ensure that our data that we capture is accurate. But none of the very high or high risk, which are done by our sector experts in protection, none of those have sort of declined. We're doing all those within the timescales that we've set in our risk-based intervention programme.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. This slide shows our overall fire engine availability, and as you can see, Commissioner, and we've discussed this on a number of the OPMs recently, there has been a decline in availability across all our fire engine, as both whole time and on call. We have seen that the biggest element of that is within on call, but we have seen a 4% drop across all our fire engines. I'll quickly move to the next slide because that breaks it down into on call as well. So as you can see, from 2022 to 2023, there has been a 10% drop in on-call availability. We're hugely aware of this. I know we've spoken about it previously with regards to the dedicated station manager role into on-call futures to try and improve this. And I know Area Manager Ilsley, who is on this meeting, will be talking about some of the workforce planning challenges that we've got and how we've tried to overcome them now and in the future. Just a note on this, myself and the Deputy Chief went and visited. We had a recent on-call Safe to Ride course, which finished at the start of February. So we do have 12 new recruits into our on-call service, and of those 12, they were actually one from 10 stations, and we had 2 individuals going to one of our stations. Part of the work that the station manager in charge of on-call futures will be looking at is to try and ensure that those recruitment drives are directed at those stations where we do have sort of more challenges with getting that availability. So you can see those quite clearly from this chart.
And I know that we've got a question from Councillor Hollier about Huntington, so we'll address that then. But I am conscious that, Huntington on call, although it has stepped up significantly, it's not higher. And I just wondered if you could tell me why that is.
Yeah, certainly. One of the challenges, Commissioner, is all around festive period and the holidays with our on-call, because they're taking leave from their primary employment. Huntington has increased. You know, it's not doubled, but almost double from the previous sort of 4 months prior to the removal of the Huntington whole time appliance. We do have local issues with availability in Huntington, but as I've said, the on-call station manager is aware of that, and we are looking to be able to sort of do some directive focused recruitment information around those stations where we do have currently difficulty in staffing those appliances.
And actually, I might want to explore that a little bit further, especially with the depth on the, you know, on this call too. And that is that when we did the risk and resource model, we did say that we would be putting additional staff, whole-time staff, into Huntington to make sure that there was a really good levels of attendance, you know, response times. Can you just comment, please, on that, Deputy Matt? Because I am concerned, although it has really jumped up, which is great. I think it's something that, you know, people around, residents around Huntington will be looking at.
Absolutely, Commissioner. I think it's important we don't lose sight of the significant increase in availability, particularly around the Huntington area. So in the first instance, the commitment was made that we would actually make sure that we would target that area, which we are doing. So we do send people in, which is what we call cover moves, to ensure that actually we have the right number of people available for the fire engine to maintain its availability. That continues. We have a silver officer, if you like, that essentially looks at the whole of the staffing across the organisation. Part of their remit is to make sure that we promote and progress the availability within Huntington. So that's the sort of more reactive side of things. And then the more proactive side of things is the recruitment campaign that we are currently running within Huntington, which is going down really well. We're starting to see more and more people from within the Huntington area come forward. It is difficult, and I think it's very easy to understand the economics factors around Huntington, but as you know, that there are clearly some social factors. These are individuals with families, with commitments, and therefore over a festive period, it's important that they take the time to spend time with the families as well, which is something that they're aware of. But for those individuals that work in Huntington, if those individuals are actually taking leave because they don't live there, then that also contributes to availability as well. So we are making sure that we are fully aware of the economic factors, but also considerate of the social factors that affect our on-call firefighters as well.
Yeah, thank you. And it must be pointed out that you are having some success in recruiting on call there at Huntington, which is just brilliant. Absolutely. As well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I will move on to the next slide. This is our instant counts, so a combination of false alarms, fires and special services over the period, and we will see. I will move on to the next slide because it shows us a bit more of a breakdown of those. So with regards to the fires, the false alarms and the special services that we go to, I will leave that just to another slide that's coming up because it does give a breakdown of those. This is our response to false alarms. So these are all the false alarms that we go to, including false alarms with apparatus and those ones that are good intent. And as you can see, most of the false alarms that we do respond to within dwellings. The next bit is around the non-residential, and those are the ones that we work with the businesses that are having a number of false alarms, usually due to their apparatus, where we work with them to try and reduce that. And there will be a slide coming up shortly that will show what's happened with regards to that. And here it is. So you can see from this, since we've done the unwanted fire signals policy, these are like what I previously said, these are non-dwellings where there isn't a sleeping risk and where we have been challenging. And since we brought this policy in, we've attended 185 fewer automatic fire alarms. So it is quite complicated because the current year is the top year. and it shows the previous year below. I thought it was the other way around, but you can see that reduction, and that is through us working with businesses, those repeat offenders, just to make sure that they're taking every avenue that they can to reduce those unwanted fire signals, because as we've talked around with regards to our availability, we want to ensure that if we are mobilising our fire engines, that they're going to right jobs and they're not being taken going to false alarms that they've no need to respond to.
Yeah, this is a really positive step here. I'm really pleased with this. Is it in line with your predictions, Damien, where you thought it'd be a reduction of?
We certainly thought there would be a reduction. I think it is really, really positive, Commissioner. Obviously, with regards to our unwanted fire signal policy, we have stated in there that we would have the ability to start charging if there were repeat offenders. I don't think we've gone to do that as yet, but we have seen that significant reduction just through that engagement with businesses to make sure that they're doing everything that they can to reduce the number of fire signals that they have. So it is a really positive slide. And this is the one with the incident count projections, Commissioner. So as you can see, on average, we have 22 incidents on a daily basis, 9 of which are false alarms, 5 fires, and 8 special service. We have started to do a number of the projections to identify where we think we would be at the end of the sort of tax year and calendar year, and the projections do appear to be coming in relatively accurate within sort of 5 or 10 incidents. So that would show that we would have a decrease in both false alarm attendance and fires, but a slight increase in our attendance at special services, which includes water incidents, road traffic collisions, all those types of incidents. And our site-specific risk information. So within North Yorkshire, we hold a huge amount of information, over 1,400 risk sites where we gather information to assist our crews if there was an event to be there. Most of which that are within date. These include premises, moorland risks, waterway risks, and we are really tracking those to make sure that each are in date. On average, our crews across the county will look at 30 of these risks per month and update them. Any that require any tactical planning information, they will be done at the time, and these just show the ones that are potentially out of date. As with all our data monitoring, it's the high and very high that we push people towards to make sure that none of those are overdue. But given the high number of risk sites that we hold, it is a relatively small number that are slightly overdue their visit. And that is the end of the performance pack, Commissioner. Are there any further questions?
No further questions from me. Thank you very much, Damien. Appreciate that. So let's now go on to the thematic presentation, and that's about workforce planning. So Ben, am I coming to you for this one?
You are, Commissioner. Yes, thank you. Okay, I'll just share my screen. If you can just confirm it's sharing correctly, please.
Not yet. There we are. It is now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, the presentation today is on workforce planning. So it's been an item of focus for us in North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service, certainly since I joined in January last year of 2023. So I want to talk everybody today through the progress we've made as a service, but also be transparent in some of the future challenges we face within workforce planning. So starting point is, what is workforce planning? So described there, it's also known as strategic workforce planning, and it's a process of analysing, forecasting and planning our workforce supply and demand. So essentially what it means is that we need to regularly review what we need within our workforce forecast the future of what we're going to need, and then what the supply and demand of that is an extract from the strategic workforce plan that's been developed by our head of people services. So the starting point for us in North Yorkshire last year was to do accurate headcount planning. So really accurate knowledge of where our staff are, what terms, conditions they're employed of, and where we may have any gaps in the service, and to re-grasp the grip of the establishment centrally. So we were looking at what the numbers of staff are, where we had vacancies, and also how that links to our budgets in North Yorkshire. The improvements we've made in that area enabling us now to move on to more effective succession planning. So changing from being quite reactive in our approach to proactive, looking at what gaps we may have in the future, depending on retirement profiles, attrition rates for other reasons, and also looking at the skills and capabilities we're going to need within roles in North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service in the future. And then when we get to where we need to be, doing effective strategic workforce planning, we'll be thinking 3 to 5 years ahead. We'll be looking at the next RM, the next CRMP, and an early nod to looking at what skills, capabilities, roles, terms and conditions of employment we're going to need in the future. So, and I guess going back to some of the points on the previous presentation from Area Manager Henderson, I think it's really important to make the point that workforce planning, a lot of the decisions you make can take 2, 3, 5 years to take effect. That's why we want to make sure we're setting the service up to be effective in the long term and also efficient as well, and move away from some short-term measures, despite a lot of work that has gone into improving our current position. So what are the benefits of workforce planning? In the 21st of December 2022, the fire standards developed a new fire standard for leading and developing people. So to meet the standard, it talks quite a lot about robust workforce planning. So to deliver our strategic planning objectives, make sure we're managing the risks and responding to incidents, and that's done through our community risk management planning process. To make sure that we understand the capabilities of our workforce, what skills do we need them to have, what terms and conditions of employment do we need to engage people on, and to make sure that succession plans in the future are enabling us to be more effective in this area. So point 3 on there, in terms of, there's a lot of links to our EDI developments in the service here. So attracting and maintaining a competent and diverse workforce. So there's been a lot of work in the service I will come to later on in my presentation, looking at how we can create a more diverse workforce, positive action, remodeling the organisation. So over the last year, we've seen improvements in representation of female staff, for example, at director level, at department head level, station manager level, crew watch manager, and we're in a great position where the positive action has been really effective in our recent firefighter recruitment as well. And we anticipate that more than 25% of our intake as an organisation this year at firefighter level will be female as well. Some also encouraging signs of underrepresented groups in terms of ethnic minorities as well. So that fire standard, since its creation around the time towards the end of 2022, has been a great guide for us. We are looking to work alongside that, and I think we made some good improvements alongside the implementation of the fire standard. So I guess as a starting point for me, I joined the service in January 2023, around the time that NYFRS landed their assessment of North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service. So at that time, they graded North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service inadequate for people and issued causes of concerns around workforce planning. So within that report, I'm sure people will have read it, it makes significant criticisms relating to workforce planning. It points out the fact there were high numbers of temporary personnel at all levels in the organisation, and there was ineffective systems and processes in place for workforce planning. I think from my 2 years of working at NYFRS and around the country, I think when I joined the service in January of last year, I'd say that's quite an accurate assessment in terms of the grades and the cause of concern. So there's definitely a lot of room for improvement in the service. To provide some data to support that assessment and again demonstrate some of the progress we've made, this is the organisation of some data showing from Chief Fire Officer level right up to crew manager level. As at the 31st of December 2022, you'll see the first column there lists how many posts we have at each level, and then the next one shows how many substantive staff were in position at that point in time, and concerningly, the percentage of staff who were temporary back then. And I look back and can smile at it now with all the progress we've made, but it did show that approximately 42% of our managerial establishment in North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service was temporary in role, which obviously causes a lot of issues around consistency of line management, direction to departments and functions, uncertainty for our staff regarding their progression, their career aspirations. And at the time, the service stance was to not enable access to development folders and ongoing promotion to those individuals as well. So it was stalling and understandably causing a lot of frustration in the organisation as well. So that's a bit of a snapshot of where we were at the end of 2022.
Ben, can I just ask a question and put some context around this? Why was the service in that position? It might be very hard for you to be able to say that because you're so new into post, and so is Matt, the deputy, as well. But, you know, trying to get an understanding of why the service was in that position in the first place.
It's a good question, Commissioner. I think in terms of, I'll kind of cover some of the improvements, which I guess by proxy will indicate where there was issues before. But I think it was a little bit of lack of grip. Still, I guess, with the Enable coming into the service, learning how to work well together with a shared service provider, creation of kind of meetings and boards to bring people together to make joint decisions as well. So I get the perception that wasn't happening quite the way it should have done in the organisation. I think scheduling of promotion boards and recruitment activity as well led to that position. But I do look back and smile now with the improvements we've made, and data is showing the positive uptake. And I'll allow Matt to come in there as well. Commissioner, thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks, Commissioner. I think Ben's very eloquently put where we were as a service, and I think it's very easy to forget where we were. I think, you know, 5 chief fire officers in 5 years, there's a significant turnover. So I think the foundations of the organisation weren't necessarily there. I'm not suggesting that we've come in and changed lots of things, but we've definitely provided consistency of application and a clear direction in terms of what we're trying to achieve. So I think they all contributed to where we were as a service probably back in 2022.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll continue. So the next section of the report, I just want to describe some of the work that's gone in the service in the last year. And it's been an exceptional amount of work as a combination of uniformed officers at all levels, contributing to promotion boards and some of the improvements here. But also, as I said, I think there's been a massive improvement in the way we work with a shared service provider in Enable that's led to a lot of these changes. So I'll just describe the journey. If there's any questions at any point or any points you want clarifying, I'll pause and allow it to happen. So around February and March in 2023, with the new SLT put in place, there was the development of a new NYFRS action plan. So within that process, Area Manager Henderson and Group Manager Naylor set clear, robust, senior responsible owners, which I think has been a big change in the service, where absolute clarity of ownership and regular updates and holding people account for areas they're responsible for. So the action plan certainly helped us pave a way towards success and improvements in this area and holding people to account as well through monthly meetings. In February, we commissioned a group manager promotion process. So we had 15 applicants at that point in time, a good combination of internal and external applicants. And from that process, we've been able to substantively promote 4 group managers now, which is fantastic. And it's given a lot of stability at that key department head level. We adopted a change in service approach to career breaks and secondments. We understand the commitment of staff, and there may be times where for their own development and career aspirations, they may wish to take up secondments, career breaks. Given where we were as a service, we always want to put people first and our staff and provide them opportunities, but it's the right thing for us to do to revisit some of the kind of applications for secondments and career breaks and apply an organisational first approach. And it did mean that we had to decline some opportunities for some individuals, but for all the right reasons, and ensuring that we put the organisation and the communities of North Yorkshire first. Moving on to April and May, I think one of the key kind of developments in the service was the creation of a workforce planning and resourcing board. So to your previous question, Commissioner, I think bringing everyone together, that's an incredibly well attended meeting and board that sits monthly for around 3 hours. It's a good combination, all department heads, area managers, leads and managers from talent, recruitment and HR as well. And it's enabled us to action a lot of work, a lot of improvement actions, and coordinate a lot of the work relating to workforce planning and get everyone on the same page. So within that process, we created a centralised process for managing the establishment and personnel movements. Prior to there was a lot of sporadic activity where people would have temporaries extended without really understanding the impact. And that led to some of the issues we had in our HR system as well, which couldn't cope with that approach. So bringing together a centralised process really helped us map out the progress there. So moving into May, we held then a station manager promotion process and appointed a number of individuals from there. We had 25 applicants for that process, and I think we've been able to appoint 7 staff from that process this year, which again is fantastic. I should make the point at this stage, Commissioner, that all these promotion processes are very labour intensive. They require a lot of managerial hours, a lot of time and resource from our talent colleagues as well. We didn't want to get to the point, despite on occasions having, say, 4 group manager jobs or 7 station managers jobs of sifting loads of people out at application stages. We've allowed a vast number of people the opportunity to go through the development and get meaningful feedback for their own career aspirations as well. So it's been a very labour intensive process at group station manager level, and even more so at watch manager, crew manager and firefighter, which I'll come on to. Towards the end of May, some of the RN changes allowed us to restructure our prevention and protection department, which we've ended up with a fantastic individual at department head level at prevention, who's brought some very unique skills into the organisation, a lot of very good enthusiasm, more diversity at key department head level as well. It's also given the fact that they are such key elements for the HMI criteria to allow the previous head of prevention and protection to focus on protection, which is a significant remit in its own right. So they were the kind of the key improvements we made in the first 5 months of 2023. I'll move on to the summer now. So in June and July, we commissioned a full rebuild of our HR personnel system. So there've been a lot of changes in the organisation that were temporary or trials, and it meant the HR personnel system wasn't keeping up. So that was a massive piece of work from People Services. Some really key individuals in there deserve a lot of credit, and it's allowed us to more accurately do the headcounting I spoke about earlier, and allow us to forecast and project when we'll have leavers based on retirement age and those kind of things as well. All that great work within the HR personnel system enabled me to take a paper to SLT in the summer of last year to commence whole-time firefighter recruitment activity. So most services, I think it's fair to say, it takes over a year to do a full whole-time firefighter recruitment process. There's a lot of key tests that need to take place. There's a lot of number of tests, application forms, fitness assessments, interviews, and very proud to say that a working group led by our head of talent and our group manager in training did some fantastic work and have arrived at a point in just 8 or 9 months where we've got some outputs of that process now. And as I mentioned earlier, we are in a position now where we can bring between 30 and 40 new recruits into the organisation this year, which is fantastic and a very exciting time. And it's a very diverse group, and I think it shows the benefits of the positive action work that was done there as well. To ensure that we're making policy-based decisions, we reviewed and rewrote the recruitment and selection policy to make sure that it's up to date and it's aligned to the NFCC and some of the other kind of national drivers in there as well. We're also in a position where, from the developments within the HR and personnel system, we could create a number of dashboards which enable us to more accurately project when we will leave, where staff will leave. That is still a challenge given the changes in the pension rulings. People used to 99 times out of 100 either leave at bang on 30 years service or age 50. With the pension changes, it's a little bit more changeable now, but we have made some better projections based on improved data there. In August and September of 2023, we reached an agreement with the rep bodies, predominantly the Fire Brigades Union, on a relocation process for the staff at Huntington. Really pleased with the kind of the shared work and the joint work we did with the FBU on that. I think it led to a very person-centred approach to relocating staff. Certainly make the point that a lot of the staff enjoyed working at Huntington, but the way that work was done in a very person-centred approach led to no grievances, no complaints being put in, and the vast majority of staff from Huntington being relocated to a watch and a station of their preference. We launched the firefighter recruitment process in August and September. So just a month after having the approval from SLT, we started that work. It was the first time some of the people in Enable had done that work. So it was great, the work that they'd done to plan that work out as well. And we went live with a new recruitment and selection policy that quickly was agreed with rep bodies as an improvement to the service as well. October, November, we developed some training needs analysis and detailed training plan, making sure that our training plan for this year is fully costed, and it was built in a whole-time recruits course, which is planned to begin in April this year and run to July. So very exciting time for any fire and rescue service. being able to bring in new energy to the organisation, new recruits, diversify the workforce as well. So that recruits course will begin in April this year, and we're all very excited about that. A huge undertaking was the watch and crew manager process. So I mentioned some of the numbers earlier regarding applications for group and station manager. We had collectively more than 100 applications for watch and crew manager. Vast majority required incident command assessments, which again is a very labour intensive process, and a significant number went through interview as well. So we've called on a lot of staff from across the organisation, enabled police colleagues to sit on interview panels, and it's been a massive piece of work in there as well. So very pleased it's allowed us to stabilise that tier of the organisation as well and continue our journey towards a stabilised and substantive workforce. In October, we reached a local agreement with the FBU on access to development in role and competent pay, which was a great progression and joint working between SLT and of the Fire Brigades Union. What that's enabled is new access to development folders and programmes, even if people are temporary in role, so they can continue their ongoing development and help us get to the point of having a competent and substantive workforce. All that work, and there's a lot more work, I do point out this is predominantly by exception, led to, in October of 2023, NYFRS, just 9 months after issuing it, removing the cause for concern. Now, that's not to say we don't have significant further work to do as an organisation. There are a lot more improvements we have planned and are needed in the organisation, but to go from being inadequate and a cause for concern with HMI in January 2023, to having the causes of concern removed, and hopefully people have read the letter from HMI, which highlights a lot of the improvement work in that 9 months. It was a great effort by a lot of people that have contributed to having that cause of concern lifted. And then I'll just finish off this section over the last 2 months. So the large crew watch manager process, we held a postings board in December, and at the end of January, a significant number of those new watch and crew managers were put into their new roles and are doing really well in them as well. And it's enabled some really strong, along with the first line leaders course we're promoting across the organisation, that really key leadership level in the organisation to be substantive, competent, and working towards leadership development is fantastic. And I think will have kind of long-term benefit for the organisation. We completed the whole-time firefighter interviews. So again, we had more than 900 applications for whole-time firefighters. We've got to the point where we've had over 60 pass the process. And I said, provisionally, we're looking at an intake of between 30 and 40. It's a really good mix of people who are new to the fire and rescue service, but also from our current on-call firefighters, which does show that it is beneficial and advantageous to your aspirations of being a whole-time firefighter by learning the ropes, so to speak, and taking that development on as an on-call firefighter, if that is indeed your career aspiration. And then last point I'll make as well, we launched a new maintenance competence programme that's obviously to be embedded this year. That went live in January this year and is helping shape the training that all our crews do and make sure it's aligned to national operational guidance. So I'll just pause if there's any questions at that stage, Commissioner, before I move on to the rest of the presentation.
Yeah, so I've got a few, thank you, Ben, but I must say there has been so much work done in this area and it has been so rigorous as well. I am really, really pleased to see all of this work, and obviously I've been kept abreast of it, but I am delighted. It's so in-depth and the service just feels so different to where it was originally when I came into post, so very well done for that. I suppose for me, I'm really interested on the impact this has had on morale in the workforce as well, because having a more substantive workforce has got to improve morale too. I've got some questions around how do you support high potential staff and aspiring staff, and our staffs, do they feel like they're supported to get their level of learning and development that's available to them to improve that as well? I'll start with those. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you. Certainly in terms of morale, Commissioner, I certainly do hope so. When I go around, I think it's a very positive culture in North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service. I think people seeing that as an organisation we're looking to create and support people's development, and not just in a way that's words, but shows in their pay, in their substantive status, and enables their future career progression, which was for a period of time seemingly kind of restricted. So I certainly hope so, and that's the feel I get. I think it's a great culture in North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service and a great place to work. And could you remind me your second question, Commissioner? Apologies.
So it was about how do you support high potential staff and aspiring leaders? You know, how do you encourage them and identify them?
That's great. So a number of ways. So we issued a number of trials last year we have a coaching and mentoring academy. So we've got a number of fully accredited using the British School of Coaching, coaches and mentors in North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service now. We've trialled a number of different campaigns. For example, we had a SHINE programme, which was a positive action for female only. That's led to some very successful outcomes from people who've been on the SHINE programme within promotion boards and now also recruitment. We ran an on-call specific programme as well. I'm very pleased to say a number of the people who were within that on-call coaching and mentoring programme have also been successful in the whole-time firefighter programme as well. So I think it's massively important. Another change we're going to make from April next year is an improved PDPR system, so personal development reviews. That'll be a bit more modernised and a bit more kind of communicative and allow people to kind of request target development. A bit less of a tick box exercise, if I'm honest. I think the old format has had its day. So that's another change we're looking to bring in April that will enable kind of target development and us to identify where we've got talented individuals.
Great. And what about, are the staff satisfied with the amount of the level of learning and development that's available to them?
I certainly hope so. I guess it's a delicate balance. You know, the vast majority of our workforce are on call. It's a delicate balance between providing development for those individuals and then overwhelming them as well. We appreciate we've got precious time with our on-call colleagues who have, in most cases, primary employment, families as well, that they're juggling as well. So we're developing something called an on-call impact assessment for any new training programs, any new policies to make sure that they're fit for our on-call colleagues as well. But yeah, certainly there's a lot of options out there. We have a leadership hub available on the intranet. For crew watch managers, as I mentioned, we have a first line leaders program. For our middle managers, we have a leading through change program. So there's a lot in terms of leadership and development that's enabling people's career progression on top of the coaching and mentoring academy as well.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. So where are we now? So we took exactly the same data return that we ran from previous in the presentation at the end of 2022. And this is where we are as at 31st of January. So if we revisit the points from earlier where we were 42% temporary enroll, there's been a lot of work in promotion boards, creating promotion pools where we can appoint people if gaps fulfilled rather than just temporary vacancies. So we've got to the point now where we're down to just 11% temporary from crew manager up to chief fire officer as well. So 42 down to 11. There's a lot more people substantive in post working towards their competency and development as well. So it's a sequencing. What I will say is at that point is it's never going to be zero because unfortunately we do get sickness. Yeah. We don't ever want to stop secondments completely and those kind of things. And there's also a number of temporary roles in the organisation that have been afforded through temporary funding. So if those weren't the case, it'd be a lot healthier. What we are trying to do is make sure that every substantive establishment vacancy in the organisation is filled by someone substantively. And every year we do a promotion board, we create a pool. So we don't just fill vacancies available then, but also allow us, if a vacancy comes up in the next year, we can appoint people from as well. So a much improved picture. Firefighter we will include next time once we've got through the kind of the final stages of firefighter recruitment, the direct intake and the recruits course this year, but it will be a similar picture for firefighters as well. So it's a much more stable structure as a result of all that work. And yeah, a much improved picture.
Just got a quick question, Ben, on the service generally. Over the years, have had difficulty in non-operation professionally skilled and qualified roles, attracting those. And now we see that being experienced in other areas such as learning and development and project management. Are those areas being looked at and addressed? Are you still having difficulty in recruiting to those posts?
We're certainly looking at them, Commissioner. So as part of the Workforce Planning and Resourcing Board, we have what we call a critical role register. So for any uniformed role, we have natural progression. So if somebody left, for example, at group manager level, there'll be a number of people at station manager level that with a level of development can step into that role and progress with the right subject matter knowledge. We have identified some areas over the last year, for example, mechanics, IT professionals, HR professionals, that we are limited in terms of what we can do to compete with the private sector, and it's a very competitive job market. I think people are more transient in their approach to work within certain skilled professions as well. So what we're trying to do through business continuity management as well is make sure that if we do identify any kind of single points of failure in our staffing, or any kind of critical roles where it take a long time to develop somebody in those skills, we've got clear business continuity plans and backup plans, so to speak, as well. So it is a competitive job market for some of those skills. Certainly within our enable structure, we have had challenges filling some of those roles, but yeah, it's important we're aware of them and we have backup plans as well.
Thank you. Matt, can I bring you in?
Thanks, Commissioner. I think Ben covered it then, but I think just one thing that I did want to note is that, yes, it is difficult, and we obviously can't compete with private sector pay, but what we can do is create the right culture and environment for people to want to come to work, and we offer a unique selling point in our sector, which is purpose, and that's one of the things that we actually push. You know, we come to work, it's one family, and our purpose is to make the people of North Yorkshire safer, and that's something that we hold on to tight, and it's the social capital that we have within the sector. So whilst there is a challenge, we think we've got a very unique selling point and something that we're very proud of.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. So that's kind of the progress made of the service. I will make the point we do have a lot of work to do. Certainly there are further improvements that are planned and will happen over the next year or two as well. So the next part of the presentation, just want to be transparent with yourself and the communities and any viewers as well about some of the ongoing and future challenges we have. So I've summarised some of them as bullet points there, and I'll touch on them. And again, if there's any questions, please do jump in. So I think I made the point earlier in the presentation that there's been changes to pensions in the sector, which is making it a lot more challenging for every fire and rescue service in the country to project when people will leave the organisation under retirement. So the old pension rules did mean that most people would leave, as I said, on pretty much bang on 30 years service or the age of 50. People are leaving at a kind of a broader range of dates and ages and lengths of service now. So it is more challenging, but we are accruing data to try and work out kind of scenario modelling from different ages, and it's enabling us each year to make sure we know how many people are likely to leave the organisation under retirement or for other reasons each year as well. But it is a growing challenge for a lot of services and has led to more challenging workforce planning. To your point earlier in terms of critical roles and single points of failure, the important thing for us, first of all, as a service, is to be aware of where we do have single points of failure in the organisation, where people have true unique skill sets, or roles that require a significant level of kind of upskilling if someone wants to come into them brand new as well. So it is a challenge in terms of, with leaner and leaner support structures, you are creating more single points of failure as well. The next point I'll make around short-term planning projections and funding and pay awards. This has been a kind of a perennial problem for fire and rescue services, where it's kind of year by year knowledge of what funding you will receive and year by year knowledge of what pay awards will be as well. So it does make it challenging to plan far in advance. As I said earlier in the presentation, in an ideal world for strategic workforce planning, you'd be thinking 3 to 5 years ahead. But every year you kind of sit and wait for what will be the kind of the funding award, what will be the pay award, and you have to react accordingly. So we obviously do certain different scenario modelling based on different levels, but it does create challenge to us thinking further in advance than we like to. The next point there is around funding formula and investment. The way fire and rescue services are funded varies depending on what your funding streams are, from council tax precept, from business rates. When I worked at NYFRS, got the chance to go and look at approximately 20 different fire and rescue services. You can see the impact and the disparity of the way the funding formula works, and it does lead to services, in my opinion, like North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service, more challenging environment for investment, where we do have a large geographical area to cover. But because it's a very rural area, it receives limited council tax precept and business rate, so it does make it more challenging for us and impacts things like response times and the different duty systems and options we have in that environment as well. The next point, and I will cover later in the presentation as well, data is showing that we have an ageing and more transient population in rural areas in North Yorkshire. So up-to-date census data, using mosaic data as well, it's shown that in rural areas, ageing population and also more transient people working and living in different environments certainly makes it more challenging for us with the on-call model, where there's less people of a working age living in the rural areas. Certainly the commitment required for a number of the fire and rescue services role, the on-call role requires a massive amount of commitment. Shift, day crewing require nighttime elements, a lot of the FDS and even the gold rota as well. The vast majority of roles in the fire service do require a lot of commitment, and we are seeing that different generations of people coming into the working world are less, in occasions, receptive to the level of commitment that is required. I made the point around sustainability of the on-call firefighting model. We are seeing around the country it is a national problem, declining on-call availability for some of the reasons that I and the Deputy Chief mentioned before. We have seen a number of services now that are looking to completely remove on-call firefighting as a model. That's certainly not our aspiration here in North Yorkshire, but we do want to be transparent about the challenges we face. Looking at the diversity of the workforce, it does impact the attraction and the retention for certain underrepresented groups. We are working very hard under positive action and restructuring the organisation to make us more diverse. But like every other fire and rescue service, we are inheriting a kind of workforce of limited diversity at this point in time. It will take a number of years to become proportionate and representative of the communities we serve. And then the last point on there as well as a workforce planning challenge is the vast majority of roles in fire and rescue services require significant training requirements. So there's not many roles in a fire and rescue service, certainly operationally, where somebody can come in and be competent in role very quickly. For example, a firefighter, it's generally a 2-year development programme. A lot of the skills, fire safety, a lot of the roles in the organisation do have significant training needs analysis, which does take time to upskill people. So if you do lose people for unexpected reasons or people retire quicker than you would think, it makes succession planning more of a challenge because of the significant upskilling required, because we're a safety critical organisation. So I'll just move on. So the last point of the presentation, and apologies, I'm taking a lot of time here. I just want to demonstrate some of the work we're now doing in the service to look at our on-call areas and assess, certainly so we can be more targeted with recruitment, but also look and realistically look at the viability long-term of some of our on-call station areas. So this is an isochrone map. For anybody who's unfamiliar with this is Summer Bridge. So Summer Bridge, the vast majority of our on-call fire stations, we have a 5-minute turn-in time to be effective for response times, which means that if you allow 1 minute for people to respond to their pager, which is alerted, and get into their vehicle or their whatever they're kind of they travel in to get to the station to then respond to a fire call. So that map there presents what a 4-minute isochrone is. So that's the catchment area we're realistically looking at Summer Bridge to be able to provide a 5-minute response in there. So the next level of data that our group manager for service improvement is looking at is we've acquired mosaics data, which allows us to assess how many properties there are in that area. So realistically, we know what is our pool for recruitment and retention, and how viable do we believe it is long term to be able to provide a response from that location. So it doesn't just plot where the locations of properties are, it puts people into different groups, and we can assess versus our current on-call workforce what is the most likely recruitment age or demographic of what an on-call firefighter would potentially be interested in that area. So what this is telling us, within the current 4-minute isochrone for Summer Bridge, there's approximately only 600 and something properties to be able to actually create an on-call workforce there. So approximately 664. So within there, there's different bands on mosaic. So country living, this is again using different demographic data. And what that's telling us that of the 387 properties that fall into that group, 128 and 60, so 188 are of retirement age 66 plus. And whilst we don't have any upper age bands for recruitment into on-call firefighting, it is showing that it's quite an aging population in parts of our rural communities as well. So within that band, there are 86 properties of people of aged 46 to 55. The next group, looking at rural reality, again, a significant number of people 66 plus. A significant number of people who are aged 56 to 65, and just 61 properties with people aged 36 to 45, which is potentially a traditional recruitment age that we would target for on-call. So as I said, how it will benefit is it allows us to be quite targeted, whether it's through leaflet drops or through how we approach people for recruitment, but it's also giving us a decent understanding of what is our widest possible pool, so to speak, of how many people we realistically got to go out for recruitment as well. So, and again, looking at aspiring homemakers, just 10 properties aged 36 to 45. So we're doing this now for every on-call station in the county. It allows us to be very targeted in the way we do recruitment, but it's also giving us ourselves a very realistic view around the challenges we face and any plans that we may need to create to mitigate around challenges. So I think for a long time in a lot of fire and rescue services, it's been perceived as a performance issue for fire and rescue service around on-call availability. But what all the data is telling us is demographics are changing in these on-call areas, and we can control what we can control in these areas. But ultimately, if there's not people of a working age or prepared to do on-call firefighting in these areas, and all the data is telling us both of those areas are declining now, we do need to plan around it and create different plans for a long-term sustainable future for North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service. So again, I'll pause there, and that is the end of the presentation, Commissioner, but if there's any questions, I'll happily field them.
Yeah, so when we look at Summer Bridge is a really good example of how difficult it is to recruit on-call firefighters. But how are you working and how are you targeting employers in those areas so they may be able to release their employees to go on-call?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of traditional methods in North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service for a long time. We have a group of on-call watch managers who previously report to their district manager. What we've done now with the station managers being created, looking at on-call futures, is remodeled so all the on-call watch managers report into that central team now. So we can look at targeted social media ads. We've created a lot of new kind of social media adverts and videos. It allows us to be more targeted. If we were to do leaflet drops before, they would go in every property, which is quite inefficient. What it allows us to do is that one of the bits that we're looking at, and the individual in the station manager in that role as well, is looking at kind of employer recognition as well, improving the way we do that. So there's potential kind of PR opportunities for employers who do release, improving our kind of awards systems as well. So we are looking at where there are kind of local employers. We've got some great examples in North Yorkshire of some employers who do release their staff during the daytime, which is the challenging period for fire and rescue services, daytime on-call availability, because people are tied up in their primary employment. We've got some great examples, but if there are any employers in the locality of our, on-call fire stations, please do consider releasing your staff for on-call firefighting. They're not that often used. It doesn't often have that much of a disruptive impact on your business, but it does enable our ability to have a fire cover in that area, which, should you need it in your business and your properties in that community, certainly allows us to provide a better response as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks, Ben. Right, since we've come to the end of that, I just want to say there has been a huge achievement here. There's been so much work done, very well done. But as you say, Ben, there's still a lot more to do. But, it's great. Huge strides forward for the service there. So thank you. Okay, so we're going to go on to the spotlight section today. So that's questions that I'm asked by the public or things that I want to bring up here in this meeting. So I've got a couple of questions here. So we often talk about the struggle to maintain availability of fire engines at on-call stations. Could I give you the opportunity to describe the on-call firefighter role to the public who are watching here and to those who may be interested in signing up, and the benefits to businesses who may consider releasing their staff to be on-call firefighters? Who would like to take that one?
I'll take that one, Commissioner, please. So I think first I'd like to emphasise what is the invaluable role that on-call firefighters play in our communities. These sort of dedicated individuals epitomise the commitment, resilience, and that profound sense of duty and purpose. So our on-call firefighters are crucial support during emergencies, ensuring that we have that rapid response to fires, accidents, and indeed other incidents, and their readiness to drop everything and answer the call makes them that vital lifeline to both safeguarding lives and our properties within our communities. In terms of the skills of on-call firefighters, particularly what they bring to our primary employers, they extend way beyond firefighting. Their training instills discipline, teamwork, effective communication, all leading them to having the ability to make often difficult, critical decisions in often high hazard environments, all attributes that I'm sure people will understand that enhances the performance in various professional settings. So supporting employees in that pursuit of community definitely builds loyalty and, in my opinion, a sense of pride within the organisation that provides the opportunity for people to be on call. I think the employees also benefit from staff having problem-solving abilities, that calm demeanour under pressure, all of those qualities which are cultivated through their firefighting roles and first-class training. So, in essence, on-call firefighters to us aren't just local heroes, they're assets in the communities, and they're essential contributors to what are safer and more resilient society. And I think, to clarify, on-call firefighters receive the same training as whole-time firefighters, just delivered over a prolonged period of time. And therefore, I expect the same consistent, relentless performance, blending that comprehensive technical and tactical knowledge with an in-depth understanding of the people in their care. And that's what we expect of our on-call firefighters. So I think, as proud members of North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service, which we are, it's important we appreciate and support these individuals who often selflessly serve and embody that spirit of community and dedication. So for us, the ability to be able to release staff to be on-call firefighters is critical for us to be able to deliver the service that we do to the people of North Yorkshire.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Another quick question about digital innovation. So some people watching may have read about the collaboration between Tech UK and the National Fire Chiefs Council. It is said that this will harness the power of digital data and technology, and it aims to redefine efficiency, data utilisation and innovation within the sector. Could you tell me and the public a bit more about this? And I am noting here that the Chief is actually the national lead NFCC data lead, and he's not here today. But Matt, would you pick that up, please?
Absolutely, Commissioner. I love data. So I think probably just to sort of frame the question, I think it's important to understand NFCC. So NFCC is the National Fire Chiefs Council. They are the professional voice of the sector, made up of the chief fire officers across the sector. And Tech UK, essentially, they're the UK's technology sector, and they champion preparing and empowering the UK for what comes next in terms of data. And they work with government, they work with regulators and industry to sort of shape policy and, in the broadest sense of the term, probably accelerate innovation across markets. So for us, I think it's important to firstly highlight that transformative impact of digital and data and technology in the sector, because ultimately it's ushering a new era of efficiency, safety and effectiveness. Area Manager Ilsley has just talked about some of the data that we use to make good quality informed decisions, and that's critical to everything that we do. So I suppose in the realm of emergency response, if you can imagine, technology plays a pivotal role in optimizing response times, resource allocation. If you think about digital communication, so how do we communicate from our homes into our control rooms, and then ultimately how do we ensure that systems allow us to make swift and precise coordination, and allowing and enabling firefighters to reach incidents faster with greater accuracy? That's down to data. I think data analytics as well, making sure that we empower the service to make informed decisions. So things like predictive modelling, so we're able to essentially anticipate potential risks, allowing us to make proactive measures and strategic planning. So for things like wildfires and flooding, for us to be able to model the impacts allows us to then make the strategic decisions to mitigate those risks more effectively. There's also the technological advancements. I think when I joined back in 2023, in terms of technological advancements around training, it was very benign, but now we're starting to see training and simulation providing firefighters with immersive experiences that sort of simulate real life scenarios, and that allows them to be better prepared for the diverse challenges from both traditional fires, emergency threats, and things like cyber incidents. So I know for a fact that within our training centre, particularly within incident command, it's very difficult for us to put our incident commanders in immersive scenarios. So we actually do use technology to allow us to do that, and that allows us then to progress the decision making through technology. And I think it's also important that you understand that from a service point of view, digital data forms part of our strategic priorities. But one of the things that we've taken on board through work with the National Fire Chiefs Council and working with local partners is that whilst data is important, data needs a storyteller. And for us to ensure and understand data, we need to look at data literacy within the service. So it's very easy to give our crews and our managers data, but how do they interpret that data into meaningful information to allow us to have well-informed conversations? And that essentially encompasses where we are with digital and data and also technology within the sector.
Thanks very much, Matt. Thank you. Right, let's move on to third-party reports section. As always, we always focus in on the NYFRS report and progress to date. So, Damien, am I coming to you now for this?
You are, Commissioner. I will just share my screen again. Has the PowerPoint come up, Commissioner?
It has, yes, thank you.
Thank you. So with regards to our HMI update, I will go through quickly the first few actions on the slides, which break down the detail of our causes of concern. As Area Manager Ilsley quite rightly said, we had both our causes of concern removed following the revisit by HMI CFRS, but we have continued to work in those areas to make sure that the improvements that we've made in those areas are embedded and sustainable. So we've continued to monitor those. I will quickly go through them, Commissioner, so members of the public can see the detail. But as you can see from a number of these, a number of them are showing blue because they are being proposed to close. So we are at a stage where we're closing off quite a high number of the actions that we had from HMI with both our efficiency and our workforce planning causes of concern. And I will move through to the overview and then I can talk around some of those. So as you can see from this slide, Commissioner, a number of our areas have been moved to blue and they're proposed to close. Those will go through our governance boards, through the risk and assurance board where we do the HMI update. That will list all of the actions that have taken place in there and they will be challenged at risk and assurance board and then they will be closed off as actions. As you can see with 3.2, there's still a number of items that are showing green, which means that they are still on track. We've had the updates from them, but we're not at a closure stage as yet. Those two areas, the first one is around absence management, and we're doing lots of work with regards to that at the moment. We've actually got an audit with regards absence management currently going, and that review report will be presented to SLT, but we're moving forward with that. The second one, which is recommendation 3 within 3.2, is around the working time directive, and as the Deputy Chief has quite rightly said there, we're looking at a lot of work with data and digital, and currently we've been working with one of our providers to provide us with really accurate reports so we can monitor and manage all our staff's working time to ensure that no one exceeds the working time directive over that 17-week sort of average period. So we're working on that. We're just testing the report that we've had developed for that, and hopefully by the next time we have the OPM, that one will be able to be closed as well. So we're moving to a position, albeit HMI have closed off the causes of concern, we're moving to a position where we're confident and comfortable that we've taken all the actions that we needed to do to embed all of these changes. The next slide is with regards to our 24 areas for improvement within the report. These will remain green throughout, Commissioner, because we're not closing any of these off, because they are they're sort of naturally occurring parts of the report. So even though we will potentially close off the area for improvement, there will always be development and continuous improvement that we can make in these areas. So the senior responsible owners are fully aware of what they have got with regards their areas for improvement, and they've been evidencing and working towards those. We're just not going to close those off. We're just monitoring the progress, and I'll come into that later in the presentation when we start talking about the characteristics of good, which we will be moving towards, and we will start seeing a sort of change in presentation at this meeting as we prepare for our next inspection, which is in January 25. And finally, we have our values and culture report. A number of these have already been closed. A couple, the recommendation 12 and recommendation 14, we were awaiting information from NFCC and the fire standards before we can progress those, but we will be. And those that require an update, they have not received an update as yet, but we are well on the way with developing responses to those. So some of those areas are 28 is around staff demographics, which Area Manager Ilsley has talked about, and the work that we're doing there. Recommendation 22 is around 360-degree appraisals for all leaders. We've actually responded to the one which was for the senior leadership team, and all of the senior leadership team have had their 360-degree appraisals and reports presented. We just need to open that up to across all leaders across the organisation, and due to potential cost implications with that, we're just trying to look at the best way to achieve that. But we are quite happy, confident with the progress that we've made with values and culture, and we regularly update HMI and our progress in those areas.
I just want to say, Damien, that there has been really good progress in completing most of those recommendations. But do you have, and is it hard to, I suppose, put a timeline on those areas that are red, that they'll be changing colours?
It's difficult on some of them to put timelines to them, Commissioner, and there are some where we have put other measures in place. So one of the recommendations is for fire and rescue services to consider professional standards departments similar to what you would see in police. We have adopted another process, but obviously to adopt a professional standards department would take some quite considerable finances to it. So we've taken other measures to that. We will still continue to look at a professional standards department, but a number of the recommendations were there from HMI for us to consider certain elements. We have obviously considered all of them. We may have just taken a slightly different approach on some of the ones which we've done.
Thank you.
The HMI CFRS project plan, that is available for all our senior responsible owners and others to look at across the organisation. Lots of work, as we've seen, with regards closing off our causes of concern and addressing those areas for improvement, but we are now 10 months away from our next inspection, and we are certainly starting more than anything to look forward, to look at each of those 11 questions within the report, gather evidence, information, and assess where we believe we are against those 11 questions and any gaps that we have against the published characteristics of good on the HMI website. The inspection team are meeting with the senior responsible owners to do a gap analysis and to make a self-assessment against each of those 11 questions, and then we will go out to the service and all colleagues to sort of again show the amount of work that we have done within the last 18 months, but also the work that still needs to be done. And then we will plan that in against those characteristics of good to make sure that all colleagues across the organisation and our family of organisations are prepared and ready for the inspection that starts in January.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I am, once again, really impressed with the progress in addressing the causes of concern and also the areas for improvement. So very well done.
Thank you, Commissioner. And as always, there is just links here to HMI publications. So some of the most recent reports, the inspection team and the head of assurance, they will always direct senior responsible owners and those within the service to anything that has come out with regards areas for improvement, trends that are being identified, but also the positive practice portal. So anything that is working well in other services, we're monitoring that and seeing if that's applicable to be brought into North Yorkshire as well. And that is the end of the HMI CFRS update. Are there any further questions, Commissioner?
There isn't, but Matt, you've got your hand up. Do you want to come in?
Yes, please, Commissioner. It's just an observation, really, just around the work that we're doing. And I think it's important to remember the commitment that we made as an SLT, that we would strive for continuous but sustainable improvement across the organisation. And therefore, our focus has definitely been on our process and procedure, which takes time and also it takes energy. So I think for us to be able to start to see some of the results that we're starting to see is testament to the people that are doing the work. So from my point of view, I'd just also like to thank the people, particularly in those particular departments that are doing an inordinate amount of work to get us to this point.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Right. Thank you, Damien. OK, on to questions, public questions. So, Simon, can you bring the questions up, please? First of all, I just want to say thank you to everybody that's been submitting their questions. We've got quite a few here, so we're going to go through them. And if any of the public that have submitted the questions wants additional information, please do not hesitate to email in. OK, so question 1, and that's from Neil in Knaresborough. It's about Harrogate Fire Station concerns. So everybody can read the questions on here, but I just want to say, Neil, that I'm not really quite sure where you're getting your information from, but there are no redundancies and there are no cuts. So can I just make that really, really clear? Now, I made the decision on the risk and resource model in September 2022, so that's a good year and a half ago now, and that was off the back of evidence and extensive consultation. So the savings that will be made will be ploughed back into the on-call service and also the prevention post. So can I be really clear about that? I'm going to hand you over, Matt. Who would like to take this, please?
Yeah, I'll take this one, Commissioner. I think just to sort of, it's very difficult to sort of say anything else other than what you've said. The unhelpful narrative around redundancies is exactly that, unhelpful. There is no planned redundancies whatsoever. What I will say, Neil, is that we're currently, well, the Royal We, Area Manager Ilsley and Henderson are currently undertaking a negotiation process with Harrogate Fire Station currently. So it's very difficult to talk about the details of that. That would be remiss of me. But what I can say is that those negotiations are progressing well. I think in terms of a couple of the bullet points, what you're doing about on-call daytime firefighters, we don't have on-call daytime firefighters, we have on-call firefighters, but ultimately I think we've covered, Commissioner, what we're trying to do as an organisation around prolonging and making the offer to on-call firefighters more efficient and productive. And I think the one here around if we lose a fire engine at Harrogate, what does this mean to NES? We will be deployed more on standby, potentially, yes, because ultimately we have a global fire cover, which means that we move our resources across the county because of the vastness. But ultimately, that's part of where we are as an organisation. So I'm not sure. I think the second bullet point there, Commissioner, we've addressed it in terms of there isn't going to be any redundancies. So unless there's anything else, Commissioner, happy to take any questions around that.
Thank you. I think there's a second page to these questions from Neil about the houses, the huge number of houses being built. And that doesn't really apply because we are not cutting firefighter jobs. Please, can you give a guarantee that because of the firefighter not cutting them, would you be? No, the last question is really about, will I leave this a decision for the mayor? Well, I made it a year and a half ago, and we've already been through consultation with Huntington and done that now, and now we're on to Harrogate. So no, it won't be, because we're significantly through with the process. Okay, so on to the next set of questions, please. So this is Andy from York Recruitment Diversity. What does North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service do to promote to the ethnic communities or people from different backgrounds? What about Indian, Pakistani and Chinese? And why doesn't North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service promote this? Can you answer that, please? Matt, am I coming to you? Who's going to answer that one?
Yes, please, Commissioner. I'll take the first point and then I'll pass over to Tom, see if there's anything else from a prevention point of view that he'd like to bring up. So I think, first, Commissioner, it's important to note that equality, diversity, inclusion, and indeed culture form one of our strategic pillars. Therefore, it's at the heart of everything that we do. But I am conscious that for words to have weight, it must correspond with action which is relevant, and therefore we've committed to increasing the representation of underrepresented groups, females, etc. And they are priority areas within our EDI strategy. Now, our EDI strategy is owned by the Chief Fire Officer, and the EDI strategy has a delivery plan, which I own as chair of the tactical EDI group. So we've revised that delivery plan to support us in achieving these priorities, and we're currently engaging with stakeholders across the businesses and the community to improve our representation. I also think it's important to understand that the delivery plan is based on 5 key areas. The first one is linked to the HMI Culture and Value Report, which Damien Henderson has just touched on. It's also linked to the equality framework, which essentially outlines our duty and responsibility as a public sector organisation. So we use that as well. It's also linked to the LFB cultural review. For anybody that's listening that isn't aware of that, that was an independent culture review undertaken by Nazir Afzal around LFB, which is the largest fire and rescue service in the country. And the outcomes of that, we are mapping those across to our delivery plan. We've also got the NFCC, National Fire Chiefs Council Fit for Future paper. We're mapping ourselves across to that, and also ultimately to the NFCC maturity models as well. So in essence, we are taking a holistic view of EDI across the sector, making sure that we can demonstrate and evidence where we are as an organisation. I think it's also important that Ben also talked about our most recent whole-time firefighter recruitment campaign, which we opened up to both transferees and also applicants that are new to the service. And that was also to allow us to attract a diverse range of applicants. That included specific Have a Go days for underrepresented groups, online familiarisation events. We also targeted attraction through the women's networks, the Asian Fire Service Association, and indeed through social media posts. Internally, we also have a specific talent and diversity team. We have staff support networks, which are fantastic. And we're also just about to implement a cohort of diversity champions. So in essence, internally, we're doing a significant amount of work internally to ensure that we make North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service a great place to work. I think it'd be remiss of me not to mention in the Chief's absence around things like men's network. I think the Chief was involved in a dragon boat race recently, which was in support of the men's network and men's suicide. So we have a broad approach to diversity across the service. I'm not sure if there's anything specifically from a preventative point of view in terms of engagement, Tom, that you'd like to bring up.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Yeah, there is a couple of areas where we've tried increasing participation with all areas of the community. We passed a paper last year to be able to join North Yorkshire Police in the strategic independent advisory groups, so that wherever we can, we always, it is predominantly police based, but where we require, we've brought out a new strategy, procedure, policy, etc. We can share that, and the advisory group is made up of lots of different representatives from different areas within North Yorkshire, so we make sure we've got that balanced view before we make any changes to anything, certainly around our prevention and protection activities. In relation to faith groups, I'm not too sure about that information, where that question's been received, because we do, certainly at a local level, we do reach out, and within our calendar of campaigns, we've got materials around faith events, religious celebrations, which ties in really nicely with the preventative opportunities there. So yeah, we do an element of that, and I'd be more than happy to discuss that further with Andy, Commissioner, if any questions around the prevention work that we do.
That's great, thank you very much. So Andy, if you want to reach out for further information, very happy to do so. An issue with that? Right, next question, please. Right, Robert from Bedale. Now, this is all about hoarding. So I'm just going to read the end bit. So obviously, hoarding is a serious fire risk, with deaths, particularly among the elderly hoarders, significantly higher. And Robert has a neighbour that falls into this category. The interior and exterior of the property is a massive bonfire waiting for ignition. So why must I tolerate this ongoing risk? I respect firefighters and have given regularly to the firefighters charity, have little time for the way both the council and the fire service treat me. Will someone please act and help? My physical and mental health are at risk from these agencies who will not coordinate and act. The risks are obvious, and why am I in this terrible situation? Who would like to answer that?
I'll happily pick that up, Commissioner, if you're happy with that. Yeah, I'm a little bit, I'd like to get in touch with Robert, if that would be possible, if Robert could reach out to ourselves and look into the current fire service response up to now, because yeah, for events like this, we have real success around multi-agency responses through our community safety partnerships. The community safety officer for the Bedale area is fantastic and would happily support in that. So we can offer that. I do have to make it very clear around when it comes to individual privately owned dwellings. We can advise, we can engage, but we can't make any enforcements from a fire perspective. This often frustrates local neighbours, where potentially there's a resident within their area that possibly doesn't undertake practices as they would. So I want to make people aware of that. Hoarding, it's correct, it is a fire risk. It's something that we train partners in to look out for, identify. It is risk categorised within our Safe Links link, and that will prioritise a visit. I think it's a piece of work that's been looked at through the National Fire Chiefs Council in partnership with the NHS, and it is known as a medical condition. So one of the hard parts around reducing this risk is often the residents that do have a increased amount of contents, or maybe stored in what you wouldn't see as a traditional method, often don't know that they're unaware of doing this and very reluctant to try and reduce that. So we do train our staff around that and how we can give advice and make everyone as safe as possible. But like I say, it often comes with a challenge.
Okay, thank you very much, Robert. We'll put you in touch with Tom. Okay, next question, please. Here we go. Gerald from Richmond, the Commissioner's role. Can I ask what the Commissioner's qualifications are that enable her to hold to account a seasoned and trained officer? And also, what is the real role of the Commissioner? Well, Gerald, there is loads of information on my website about what a Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner does and is included in their role. There's also my biography on there as well, and the assurance framework, which shows very clearly how I hold the chief's officers to account. So we will email and send that all to you to be able to read through it. Any further questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Right, next question. Richard, fire engine availability. So living close to Helmsley, I would like some reassurance as to whether the fire engine in Helmsley is available 24/7 to attend to any incidents we may have. I've seen on Facebook that Kirby Moorside has had to attend to some incidents close to Helmsley where Helmsley fire engine would have presumably been quicker or closer to attend. If Helmsley fire engine is not available and if Kirby Moorside are attending another incident, how quickly would my wife and I receive help if we were trapped in a house fire? And I've heard locally that the Helmsley fire engine cannot always provide a firefighting team to enter a property on fire due to the type of fire engine and crew they have. Is this correct? And he's finding it quite worrying, that piece of information. So who would like to answer that, please?
I'll take this one, Commissioner. So Richard, thank you for the question. I understand why you find it quite worrying. I think it's important that we are transparent. So we will provide a fire and rescue service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But due to commitments around on-call and the issues that we have sometimes around on-call, sometimes it's difficult to have 100% availability. Helmsley in particular, a fantastic firefighting team that provide great availability, but they aren't available all the time. And that's normal. So what we do is, as a fire and rescue service, as I said at the start of the Commissioner's online public meeting, is that we move fire engines around, and that's the norm to allow us to ensure that we plug both geographical and risk gaps. So at any one point in time, particularly across a service as vast as ours, we're having to move fire engines around, and sometimes that we have to move fire engines from Kirby Moorside, etc., to where the risk is. So we do have that within our gift. I think it's very difficult to talk about specific times because of the number of contributing factors around availability and around risk. So it's very difficult, but we do have a 12 minutes, 8-second response time across our organisation, which is the average. With regards to Helmsley fire engine cannot always provide a firefighting team to enter a property. So Helmsley currently have a technical TRV, which is a slightly smaller fire engine. They are able to attend numerous incidents, but they have to be backed up by a Type B appliance, which means somewhere like Kirby Moorside, Malton, etc., they will also attend for a property or a primary fire. So whilst it may not be exactly what you want to hear, we aim, as we always aim, to provide strategic alliance across our organisation, particularly around response.
Thank you very much. Right, next question. Sorry,
Commissioner, could I just add as well?
Yeah.
Part of the prevention strategy and delivery plan is based around focusing prevention activities in rural areas, places furthest away from an emergency response, and one of them, as well as that, so our community safety officers will be in those areas. Within the on-call areas, we are training and allocate funding resource for our on-call firefighters to undertake prevention activities, so we can offer safe and wells in that area. If Richard is feeling like that would be a benefit for him to help him feel safer around this risk, or his foreseen risk, sorry.
We can say send some a safe and well visit information over to Richard. Yep. Okay, that's
thank you.
Thank you. Right, next question. Paul from Harrogate. Changes to the fire service. So I saw that you published the plan for the fire service, which highlighted the changes that were going to be made, but this was some time ago. What's happened since then? What fire stations have closed? None. There's non-closing. So how many firefighters have been redeployed, and have you moved the fire engines around like you said you would? So who would like to take this one?
So I'll take the first point, and then this is specifically around Harrogate, but I think I'll bring Ben in shortly just to talk about the changes at Huntington. But I think probably so lots happened. So in terms of the delivery of the RRM and the fire transformation programme, we are at a position whereby the swift water rescue capability at Skipton is now in place. We've now moved over from the AFA charging criteria. We've looked at and have implemented the changes at Huntington. As I said earlier, Commissioner, it's very difficult for me to talk about the specifics at Harrogate due to the current negotiative position that we're in, but I'll pass over to Ben, who provided the significant amount of work around Huntington.
No worries, thank you. So the first significant change in fire cover with the RM was at Huntington. So to reiterate, no fire stations have closed. There is still an on-call fire appliance at Huntington. In terms of redeployment, and going back to the question earlier from another individual around redundancy, when we make change management processes, it's always our aspiration to disestablish posts and redeploy people rather than making anyone redundant. And the proof of that was in Huntington, where the 24 firefighter posts were disestablished and all the individuals were relocated to a station of their preference. The majority chose York or Acomb, and there were some gaps there. There were some who moved to Scarborough and some into our training centre as well. So it was a disestablishment of the whole-time posts at Huntington, with relocation opportunities afforded at the individual's preference. In terms of moving the fire engines around, I'm not quite sure what that question means, Commissioner, but in terms of Harrogate, we are conscious of the fact that the Fire Brigades Union currently have a trade dispute in about TRVs at Harrogate and Scarborough. We're keen to work with them to change that second appliance to a Type B fire engine, and we're currently in negotiations there. So I'm not quite sure what the last question means, apologies, but there's the aspiration to change the second appliance at Harrogate from a TRV to a full Type B fire appliance.
Yeah. So, Paul, I'm really happy for one of my team to get back to you about that last bullet point to get a better understanding of what exactly you mean. OK, next question, please. So the City of York Councillor, Councillor Hoyer. Hello, Councillor. From Haxby and Wigington Ward, and it's about Huntington on-call availability. So I believe this document from the 1st of March to the 31st of May 2023 PAM presentation shows an approximate availability for the Huntington Fire Station, now on call, of about 60% in June and July 2023. Are there any more up-to-date figures available, please? And then it goes on to say, North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service has said fire response times will rise by less than 4 minutes, but this has been disputed by the Fire Brigades Union, who say delays of up to 16 minutes were possible for people living in Huntington, Haxby, Wigington, Strensall, New Earswick and parts of Rawcliffe. Is there an indication of the rise in response times since the change?
Thank you, Commissioner. I think Damien's going to pick this one up. It forms part of the performance pack, so we can just add some more context around that, if that's okay, Damien.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. So taking the first question, Commissioner, as we suggested with the availability in the 4 months prior to removing Huntington's whole-time appliance, the availability at that station was on average 35%. Since the removal and since the movements that we've started to prioritise into Huntington, that has risen again now, and on average for December and January we're averaged out at 61%. We did mention in the performance update some of the issues that we have, and we are prioritising increased resourcing at that location. We have moved people across. We have prioritised Huntington to make those cover moves, but on occasions we've also moved people into other locations around York. If Huntington needed 3 people in to provide Huntington's cover, but we could move 1 person into Acomb, at times we have done that as well, to just increase the pumping appliances within the York area. So that's the first question. With regards to the second question, we're currently working with sector leads with regards our updated community risk profiling. So we've got some up-to-date information with regards our response times. Response times in York remain our quickest across the county, under 7 minutes. We haven't seen any indication of a rise in response times as yet across York, but being completely transparent, obviously, if we don't have that 24/7 whole-time pumping Huntington, there may be occasions where there is a slightly delayed response from our other locations, be that the on-call at Huntington or Acomb and York, but we haven't seen that. And just to provide some reassurance for the public in those areas, as I've suggested, our response times within the York district, this is for all incidents including primary fires and RTCs, is still well below 7 minutes, which is proportionally very good within North Yorkshire.
Right, so that should give you some assurance, councillors. That's really good. Next question, please. So Ian from York, Husthwaite solar farm proposal summary. So this is relating to the planning application for the proposed Woolpot solar farm near the village of Husthwaite, 7 miles south of Thirsk and bordering the North Yorkshire Moors Park. Okay, so everybody can read that through, but the question is, can you please ask the North Yorkshire Chief Fire Officer why their response to North Yorkshire Council on the Woolpots application is far less considered in nature than other fire rescue services, and why they state that operational firefighting considerations would only be addressed should the Woolpot scheme be approved. Surely, if the scheme is approved, then it's too late to address the serious concerns raised by the local community.
I think I can pick that up, Commissioner. Yes, so I think we had a briefing session around energy storage sites, and yeah, as I'm sure not everyone is aware on this meeting, but yeah, we aren't actually we're a non-statutory consultee, and actually the approval for these sites is done through the local authority planning process. This means that we have what we do as a fire and rescue service. We do offer and we do work with the planning local authority, and we have been doing a lot of active engagement around this area with the planning teams. We use our National Fire Chief Council's advice. This is advice from evidence and subject matter expertise. We feel that this is the most comfortable advice that we can give around this planning section. There is, I believe, out of 44 English Fire and Rescue Services, 2 fire rescue services have given their own sort of independent opinion. Personally, and as the protection team, we would rather use that National Fire Chief Council guidance and expertise. It's regularly been reviewed. And often it sits on the protection strategic meetings, the NFCC protection meetings, as an agenda item. So that's including everything around emerging alternative fuels and energy systems. So if there's any changes, adaptations or modifications around any of these areas, we can then adjust and adapt our recommendations as per that national consistent approach. And that's the approach we would rather take as a fire and rescue service.
Thank you. Do we have another question? Or I think we've reached the end. I think we've reached the end. Right, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, I'd like to bring the meeting to a close. Thanks to everybody for taking part. Really appreciate that. Thank you to those that are watching and listening. Thank you for your great questions. Keep them coming. It's really brilliant. We're getting so many questions and we ask every single one of them. So it's really important. The next online public meeting for the fire service will be on Thursday, the 25th of April. And we'll be looking at North Yorkshire Police next month in March. Many thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon, what's left of it. Thank you.